Welcome to the NACE Town Hall, the reality, what's happening and how we are adjusting. It is my pleasure to turn the session over to today's moderator and NACE Executive Director, Shawn VanDerziel.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our town hall meeting. We're so pleased that you're here with us today. I'm Shawn VanDerziel, Executive Director of the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and I'm joined today by a marvelous panel of experts in their field, and I'm so excited to introduce you to them, or introduce them to you. And before we get started, just to let you know what we're going to do today. So today's town hall is about the reality of where we're at now that fall is full steam ahead. All of us have had plans and that we've put into place for this fall, whether it be from the recruitment perspective and finding new talent, or it be the career development perspective and helping those students in their career journey. And now it's a check-in point to find out how things are going, what's working, what's not, what things we think we're going to need to make adjustments with, and to engage in a dialogue about that with our esteemed panelists. So I'm really excited to move forward with this. As we do, feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A buttons that are part of today's session. We can't see you or we can't hear you, but we can engage with you through the chat and Q&A function if you do have questions along the way. We'll hope to get to as many of those as possible throughout our session. So with no further ado, I would love to introduce you to the panelists. So panelists, if you could, we'll just go around, and if you could just tell us who you are, where you work, what you do, and also tell us kind of what you're doing either on your campus or with your company in terms of being virtual or on site. And it would also be helpful if you told us just a little bit about your organization in that introduction as well. So why don't we start with, we'll start with James.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I just muted my mic because it just so happens someone is cutting the yard across the street. So I'm sorry for that. We're in a virtual environment, of course, but my name is James Mable and I work at Houston Community College, and I serve as Director of Career and Job Placement Services. At the moment, we are virtual, but we are starting to have some staff go back to campus in the coming weeks this semester. We have an interesting and dynamic process at HCC, in that we have regions within our college system, and we have career services teams that support the students in those various service areas and regions.
Awesome, thanks, James. How about Erika?
Yes, thanks for having me, everyone. Hi, my name is Erika Fosu, and I'm the University Relations Lead and Diversity Recruiting Specialist at Vanguard. Vanguard is a financial investment institution based out in Malvern, Pennsylvania, but I'm out of the Charlotte, North Carolina location. So in regards to recruiting, we traditionally have been in person, but for this semester and probably for the spring semester, we'll be virtual.
Thank you, Erika. Elliott.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elliott Jones-Poulson. I'm a University Relations recruiter here at DuPont. I am based out of the Philadelphia area. Our office is based in Wilmington, Delaware. We have been primarily virtual, basically all virtual from an HR perspective since the onset of COVID. Our manufacturing sites are practicing social distancing, so we do have a presence there. But as far as our virtual recruiting, we are fully virtual for the foreseeable future.
Excellent.
And sorry about DuPont,
yeah.
We're a specialty products company. For those of you who don't know, been around since 1802, and that's us.
Excellent, thank you, Elliott. And how about Suzanne?
Great, thank you, Shawn, and thank you everybody for being here today. So my name is Suzanne Helbig. I'm the Associate Vice Provost for the Division of Career Pathways at the University of California in Irvine. So the Division of Career Pathways, we're the central career services office on our campus, and we work in concert with our Division of Continuing Education and our Alumni Association to offer career services across the student life cycle. So UC Irvine, we are located in beautiful coastal California. We have 37,000 students. Over half of them are first generation students. We're a dual designation minority serving institution, and we were recently ranked number 8 by the U.S. News and World Report, number 8 public university. Got to put in a plug for UCI. Of those 37,000 students, about 6,500 of them are on campus, and most of those are graduate students who never left. They were in their graduate housing. And as far as the Division of Career Pathways goes, our services are 100% remote. For the time being, for the foreseeable future. We'll see what happens.
That's right. It's kind of, we'll see as it goes, right?
Right.
So I would love to just get a little bit more of a lay of the land in terms of what's actually happening on the ground in each of your situations. So perhaps we could have each of you talk a little bit about the kinds of things that you had planned to do and any tweaks that you've been having to make along the way as you've entered September here. So how about we start with Erika?
Sure, thank you. So what we had planned to do was be in person, but with our virtual recruitment strategy, what we saw an opportunity to do was go agnostic. So instead of sticking with 15 schools per lead, we saw an opportunity to hit nationwide because historically we didn't have the resources or the manpower to send people off to a variety of different schools. However, what we've seen is that is a huge undertaking. It's easier said than done. So we've kind of stuck to our initial strategy of our schools that are already in our strategy and kind of sticking to that. We just onboarded with Handshake as a Handshake premium partner. And so we hope to utilize Handshake as an opportunity to reach more students and reach more universities once we can get up to speed of how to utilize that platform. But for this summer, we were able to pivot our internships to a virtual offer. We are ready to do so again for the next summer. And we've also actually increased the amount of interviews that we host with students. So historically, we would have to fly students out, book their hotels. And since that is no longer in the equation, we're finding that we can host more interviews and fill our pipelines a lot quicker.
So Erika, let me just ask you then, so you're still recruiting. What are you recruiting for? And let's start there.
Yeah, so we are recruiting for, we have a few different branches. For University Relations Lead, we have a primary focus on undergraduate students for finance and IT entry level and internship positions. We accept all majors for finance positions and of course IT computer science based majors for IT roles. That's our primary focus right now. We do have an MBA branch where my partner, Vincent Gavigan, he owns that program. We have an MBA internship and full-time program. I don't get too involved in that, but those are our two main areas.
So you're looking at your pipeline. Are you thinking about your internship program yet?
Yes, of course. So our internship, we are in great need to fill that pipeline. We're actively promoting for that on campus. Many students are, wondering if we're going virtual or if we're going to come back in person, and we don't quite have those answers yet. But what we saw with our internship this past summer is we had a very strong intern conversion into our leadership development rotational full-time programs, whereas before it would take maybe towards the end of December, January for students to get back with us with a decision. We found that as soon as the internship ended and we offered them that full-time position, they gave us a yes right away. And I'm not sure if that's because the uncertainty of employment due to COVID or just the great Vanguard experience that they have, or maybe a little bit of both. But that is a really great trend that we saw this past summer, or a great outcome that we saw with this past summer's internship.
Right. And I just want to clarify, you've expanded the number of schools that you're visiting now that you're in the virtual world as opposed to in person?
We wanted to. That was our initial plan. But then when we realized the level of coordination that it requires to engage with virtual schools, we thought it would be safe to kind of just stay where we are. And now that we have Handshake, we hope to leverage Handshake as a tool to expand. Mm-hmm.
I see. Gotcha. Great. So technology is really potentially important in terms of any expansion that might happen, but without it, it's a little difficult because everyone's doing the virtual recruiting a little bit differently from a campus perspective, right?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, very good. James, would love to hear from you in terms of those plans and what you're finding.
So we have 100,000 students, and we had planned 23 job fairs last year, and they were going on without a hitch throughout the Houston area until obviously COVID hit. And so we started with a similar plan for 2020, 2021, and we ran into a demand issue that a lot of employers weren't signing up. So we adjusted our cost structure to allow employers to register for free. And after that, they're signing up left and right. And from a community college standpoint, we have employers that maybe haven't recruited with us before, starting to recruit, like KPMG and other accounting and consulting firms that we just haven't had recruit on a regular basis. They're actually signing up for our events. So we're looking forward to that. So we went from 23 to 7 this semester, and the employers are registering for all of them. So we're looking forward to our virtual career fairs this semester.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing you say is it seems like, I mean, you're coming from the community college environment, and the employers, you're seeing an increased demand from employers because they can now reach you, as opposed to in the past, they perhaps were hesitant to be on campus, but they're willing to engage in the virtual world. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. And I'm thinking that a lot of them were recruiting primarily at universities here in Houston. And now that they're all working in a virtual environment, they're giving us a chance. So this is an awesome opportunity to rise to the occasion, to show them that they can find talent at a community college just as quickly as they could find talent at a university. So we're excited about that trend and transition happening.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, James. So Suzanne, would love to hear for you those plans and how they're playing out.
Sure, and I let the folks at NACE know that we are on the quarter system at UCI, so this is our welcome week. So we are really seeing those plans play out for the first time. But all indications are they're going well, and some of the operational adjustments we made to set us up for this fall, we really retooled our student staffing model. So we'd had about 30 student staff in very discrete roles. But this summer we cross-trained them, and we also have a number of them on call so that we can adjust if demand ratchets up. And so we just really redesigned that for maximum flexibility. That's one thing we did. Like James, we readjusted our price points. We are not doing our career fairs for free. That would be great, but like many public universities, especially, we do not get an operating budget. So we do need to cover the costs of our labor and vendor costs. However, they are much discounted than they were when they were in person. So, and we've seen, like James, we've seen employers sign up for those fairs, and we're actually having our first one this Thursday. Yeah, I'll let you know how that goes, but all indications are it's going well. Something else we did operationally was really focus on our internal communications within our staff. And that includes, weekly staff meetings with professional development, especially around technology. We bring in our staff want to be connected in this disconnected world. So we bring in guests from campus who they miss, and also to build those partnerships. We also do weekly team builders. And then I'll say those are operational. And then one big strategy that we've employed that's really exciting to us is we've expanded our audience. So with the onset of COVID, you know, we quickly had to turn our attention to students who were trying to figure out their summer internships. But we also had those students who were graduating into this uncertain landscape. So we did make access to our job postings and career fairs free to them for a year upon graduation. Again, without an operating budget. That's something we had been charging for in the past, but we thought it was the right thing to do. And we've also expanded our services to our continuing education students. They're a vibrant part of our campus. And so we now have resources for them, and we're working on expanding those even further. And I'll also end with by expanding services to alumni and continuing ed. That allows us to connect employers with those audiences. Employers have a range of hiring needs, so we're really excited to give them access to the 3 talent pools of our enrolled students, our alumni, and our continuing ed students.
I'll just add that we're having our virtual career fair this Thursday, our first virtual career fair this Thursday as well. And I saw some questions in the chat. I'll just say that we're using Simplicity to manage our operation, of course, Simplicity's virtual career fair platform.
Okay. And we're using Handshake.
Great, thank you both. And Suzanne, outside of the career fairs, are you finding what other things have you implemented in terms of the connection between employers and their students?
I think one of the things that it's not so much new as an expansion, but we were able to work with our campus to offer an internship course for credit. There were, I mean, they exist throughout the campus, but they're in pockets. And you had to be in a certain major in a certain department to get this credit. So we've really taken away that barrier for employers who are seeking a credit option for their students. And we're seeing that program expand a lot. I think with COVID, I think we've all expanded our notion of what an internship can look like. So, I mean, we retooled our policies before COVID. Remote internships were not approved. Before COVID, an internship typically looked like 10 weeks on the ground. So we also expanded into offering micro internships and helping companies kind of navigate that kind of new avenue for the student pipeline. So I'd put that under the umbrella of really re-looking at what an internship experience can look like.
Shawn, can I add to that here at HCC, I'm sure many are aware of the experimental work study program that has been proposed by the Department of Education. Houston Community College has been awarded and been accepted to be a part of that experimental program. And it's designed to provide funds to for-profit companies to expand work study into those industries and fields that maybe traditionally haven't used it, and for maybe small businesses that haven't used work study before on the for-profit side, as work study has been primarily used for jobs on campus and nonprofits. We are now meeting and designing a plan to expand for-profit work study here at HCC for some of our employer partners that would hire our students in our workforce programs.
Great, thank you for that, James, very helpful. Elliott, would love to hear how DuPont is working their way through their strategy this fall.
Sure. So thank you. We had to pivot similar to everyone else, and I think similar to what Erika had mentioned as far as transitioning from being in person to virtual. Obviously, we did not change the number of events that we planned on participating in. I think we did sort of underestimate the travel piece. So I think there was a idea that we would have more time with less travel, and that was a grave mistake. Between building booths and registration processes, all at a time was certainly consumed. So, I think we just had to adjust. We definitely still have needs, so we are currently recruiting for summer internships. spring co-ops, full-time roles across a number of different functional areas, primarily engineering focus, research and development focus, but throughout the organization. And, you know, for us, I think the big thing has just been, you know, trying to, we had to sort of pivot our preseason training, if you will. So how we go to prepare our teams to support our fall recruiting efforts is where we really had to sort of adjust. Typically, we would host, you know, several prep calls to sort of, you know, go through what they could expect on campus. This season, we had to host a number of mini calls where we thought that that would be more effective just to support the unique, you know, recruiting strategies that have been employed at the different schools and conferences that we've been attending. So each one is so different in terms of the way they're actually facilitated. That has, you know, prompted us to do more specialized training. So that's been the big adjustment for us, I think, as far as our approach.
I would love to just understand, both Erika and Elliott, when you're doing your recruiting, both maybe it's a different answer for each, but for full-time and internships, what are you communicating in terms of, are you recruiting them to be in-person experiences? Are you recruiting them to be virtual experiences? Does it matter where the locality of those students are? How are you navigating those waters right now? Elliott, do you want to start that one?
Sure. So yeah, I think for us, we've been, you know, basically moving forward with the idea that they will be in person. In some situations, one-off situations, you know, we have sort of deferred to whatever the respective hiring group, what they're, you know, what they're doing in terms of whether they're in person or virtual. So that will alter, you know, some of those discussions. But primarily, we're sort of geared up for in person, and I think we'll just have to be ready. I think if anything else, we've been able to really strengthen our resiliency through this period, like a lot of organizations and schools, in terms of just being flexible and trying to be as reactive as possible, but also proactive in our planning and response.
Great.
I would have to agree with, I would have to agree with you, Elliott. The way we pitch it is as if prepared to be in person. You know, students, our positions are still site specific, so there are some positions that are exclusive to Malvern, PA. So we do coach our students to, you know, be prepared to potentially relocate there for the summer, or if you're going to do an internship at this place, be prepared to potentially consider this place as a full-time career if you need to relocate at that time. So we are pitching in person, but again, prepared for a virtual. We've been also telling students, like, hey, if we are in that state where we have to be virtual, we'll supply you with all of the equipment that you need well in advance. So we kind of share with them a little bit of both, but I haven't gotten that much concern from students. It's more so like, are you all hiring? They're just excited to see if we're hiring, and whatever happens, happens, but they just want to be hired at this point. And I've been proactively sharing that with them. They're like, okay, that's good to know. So how do I get hired? So it's fun to chat with them about that.
Right. So I want to pivot to kind of those things that just you've realized maybe aren't working, and kind of how those real adjustments that you've made, or things that you feel like have been really successful that you're excited about doing maybe on an ongoing basis. So if we can think about that. Before we do, I do want to ask James and Suzanne about career fairs, because there have been a number of questions, and you both touched on it on pricing. We know that universities rely on that revenue, and some universities, a significant portion of their budget has been in the past based upon career fair revenue. So would love just to hear from you about what the strategy is that you've employed around pricing, and what the response has been from your employer partners based upon that. And then I'm going to turn around and ask the employers about how they feel about the pricing that they're seeing out there. Suzanne, do you want to start us out?
Sure. So yeah, as I mentioned, and echoing what you just said, Shawn, we do not get an operating budget, and we rely on that revenue, and it is our main revenue generator. So we knew that to sustain our operation, offering career fairs at no cost was really not an option for us. So we did some benchmarking with area universities and also other universities in the University of California system. And then we also did just some straight up math, like what are our labor costs? And those two factors, kind of seeing what the market will bear, plus our labor costs, resulted in our pricing structure. We have some different rates though for nonprofits to encourage them to attend. And we also actually have some higher rates if an employer wants to be a sponsor and have greater visibility at our fairs.
Great. And James.
So historically, and I'm pretty sure a lot of community colleges probably haven't charged, and we were one of those. We primarily hadn't charged for career fairs. But, we wanted to add value to our events because we had an issue where, employers may just sign up and maybe not show up. But we know that if you've invested funds into that event, most likely you're going to be there for ROI purposes and obviously to recruit our students. So we just looked at the basic structure of our market in Houston. What are universities doing? What are they charging? And how are they presenting that information to employers? And so we looked at that and we adjusted our calendar, our career fair calendar, to not compete with those universities, because we know coming in as a new department in 2018 that a lot of the Fortune 500 companies located in Houston may not have thought about us as an option. But when we launched our fee structure last year, it was well received. As I said before, we had 23 job fairs and most of those were assessing a fee, and companies were signing up without a problem. But we found that COVID did affect, employers signing up for our events here in Houston. And so we have stopped charging for the semester. We'll probably stop charging for the entire year and come back at this in 2021, 2022.
Yeah, it's definitely, every school is a little bit different. And so, the ultimate goal is certainly to connect those employers with the students for the ultimate opportunity. So totally appreciate that. And Erika, Elliott, how are you finding in terms of the pricing? Is it a hindrance? Has it been an issue? Erika?
Yes, I wouldn't say it's been an issue, but it has definitely raised some eyebrows, because when you think about what you were getting in the in-person world, we understood what the $500 was going to. It's for the venue renting, it's for equipment renting, or supplying food for the recruiters who were there. So it all kind of made sense. And so when registrations began to open and career fairs was charging, some of them were, some schools were charging higher than their in-person events, right? So we're saying, okay, well, what's 700 paying for? Like, what are we, because if it's on Zoom, then isn't Zoom free? So it was a lot of, uncertainty of like, what are we paying for? We're happy to be a part of it, but we're just not sure how our dollars are being utilized. And then there's also what we've seen in partnerships, major events or hackathons or virtual events that are now being hosted is, they're reduced the pricing, but the benefits aren't matching the price, if that makes sense. So, for example, there'll be career fairs that are now $4,000, and historically, it would be great to, send 5 people to that conference or 10 people to that conference. But now with the virtual platforms, there seems to be more limitations. So now it's saying, well, you can only send 5, but it's like, well, can we send 15 this time around? Because if the platform allows for unlimited representatives, then why is the school or why is this partnership limiting our access? So it's something that our team constantly discusses because we do not want to burn the relationships with our key school partners, but there also tends to be a lack of transparency. So I do appreciate those school partners who do, schedule one-on-ones with me and just kind of give me insight. So the insight you, Suzanne and James have provided makes sense, right? Like, I get that. But other schools are like, hey, you pay $500 and you get access to our students one time. And it's like, okay. So it's not as appealing. I saw a question in the chat saying, how do we think virtual recruiting will look in the future? And what I foresee is that it's going to be more employer centric. Whereas right now, a lot of employers are going to schools and trying to reach out to schools to tap into talent. I feel like with Handshake and Simplicity, with a lot of these platforms where employers can now host career fairs and make students come to them and don't necessarily have to go through schools, I think it might shift the dynamic of how employer and school partnerships have traditionally looked like in the past, where we've depended on the school to market and brand us, whereas now we have these platforms where we can, add our own marketing and branding and our own email campaigns. So I think it'll be interesting.
That's a good point, Erica. And I don't know, Elliott, if you have anything further to add onto that related to doing events on your own and engaging students on your own. Are you doing that yet? Are you considering it? What are your general thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's certainly on the table. We have engaged students depending on their level, like at the PhD level. I know our teams have gone out and sort of held their own info sessions at the undergraduate level, and in other areas we've been considering how we can engage with students outside of the given schools or conferences. But I think for us, I think it's just trying to be as intentional as possible and also understand that Zoom fatigue is a real thing right now. And, what value are we bringing to the discussion right now in terms of, is it a matter of, giving students or candidates a good glimpse of our organization or maybe developmental things, or, for them, what are they trying to get out of it? So it's a matter of trying to get them access to us. And I think that's what they really want. So I think it's just for us, we've just been trying to leverage our teams to be as communicative as possible with candidates at this time and try to remove some of the, mystique, if you will, from this very uncertain time.
Yeah. James, Sam, so there are a lot of questions around engagement, and certainly Erica and Ellie are both touching on this in terms of the amount of work that employers are putting into setting up these fairs, and it's different, and they thought it'd be less work, but it's actually not. It's a lot more work, rethinking it all. And then I'm curious, just from your perspective, I know both of you.
Well,
yes,
so
exactly.
A lot of work on our part.
Exactly, it applies all the way around, right? I know the two of you are just launching your career fairs, but outside of the career fairs, can we just talk generally about student engagement with your office? Are you seeing less engagement, more engagement? What about that what are you doing to help with that?
James, do you want to go or?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
We have deployed a variety of strategies to engage our students. First, at a community college, we offer workforce programs. So we partner with the faculty and program coordinators and deans to ensure they're aware of the events that are being hosted and that it's possibly a classroom assignment, or that the professor can assign students extra credit or a grade to participate. So that's one way. We also have advisory committees in each of our programs. And so we ensure that the employers on that committee or those committees are aware and they're participating as well. So we try to ground it within the actual workforce program, especially if that event is targeted to a certain industry or field. We also just use those traditional techniques. We use Simplicity, obviously. So we use a Simplicity newsletter. We used a mass email feature. We also use our institution's text messaging feature. We find that it almost seems like text messaging is the new email. Students really do respond to text messaging. So we deploy a variety of strategies, and we found that text messaging is something that really gets the word out pretty quickly. We don't abuse that. We don't send text messages out every week, but we use that strategically as another way to just ensure they get the message if they're not looking at their emails often.
Very helpful. Thanks, James. And how about Suzanne?
Sure. James, or maybe it was Elliott. I think you said Zoom fatigue. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, as staff, we recognize that right away. And so we can only imagine what our students were going through. So that was one of our intentional strategies, was to go beyond the Zoom webinar and really diversify the platforms that we're using to reach students. So for example, we added a live chat feature to our website. Students can get a quick answer to a quick question. We started podcasts. today we're doing an Instagram Live with some of our student staff. And beyond that, we already had some self-service technologies in place, but we've really been promoting them. So we, have an online resume review service available 24/7. We have online interview practice. So really offering that mix of self-service on-demand engagement tools with scheduled programs as well that bring in speakers, which now with this environment, we can bring in speakers from across the country, no problem. Couldn't do that before. And we also made it a directive for our staff to include an element or two of active learning whenever we have a webinar that brings people together. So that can be low tech, from people introducing themselves, to high tech with Kahoot quizzes, and we found a wonderful tool free called Idea Boards, where it's a virtual post-it, put post-its on the wall type of thing. So those are some of the things that we're using. Our students at UC Irvine are very engaged in our services. I think, Erika, to your point, they want to be hired. They're eager. They are not, I think to COVID, you could, and I think I'm borrowing from the EAB, you could be an accelerator, that it could accelerate your actions, or it could make you a hesitator. It seems to have accelerated to kind of lit a fire under our students to be engaged. I think I'm hoping I'm speaking for students across the country that they're eager, they're hungry. And so if employers, your time is now. And we're, setting up those different platforms and delivery mechanisms to create those meaningful connections.
That's great. Thank you.
I like
Yeah, James.
That we are using the live chat in Simplicity. We've scheduled some time for that each week, so students can, like you're saying, kind of drop some questions to us. There was a question about which platform we're using for text messaging. We're using Simple Text, and as I said, it's the institution's text messaging feature that they use for emergencies, and they've granted us the opportunity to use it as we see fit, and it's been extremely helpful. As I said, I feel like the text message is the new email.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Erika and Elliott, I'm just curious from a student engagement perspective. You've been doing, these fairs, engaging with campuses in different ways so far this fall. Are you seeing things that seem to be working better than others, or have you started to see a trend of what certain schools are doing that may have a little bit more secret in the sauce than others? Is there anything that stands out for either of you?
I guess I'll jump in on that one. For me, I think our trying to channel all of our recruiters and some of their feedback. I think platforms that have the flexibility to pivot between chat and video is tremendously helpful. And I think that helps drive the engagement and the connection piece. I know that a lot of our team, and myself included, would not be able to be stenographers or professional typists. We've learned that through this process. So the chat room, feature has certainly been interesting to navigate, as we're realizing we do not type as fast as we thought we did. But with that said, I think having that flexibility has been really helpful. And I think that, from an engagement standpoint, it was a couple different platforms we used. I can't remember exactly who the host was, but where we could share screens with the candidate. That was really helpful too, because then we could almost have like a mini info session of sorts. So understanding not every school is, or conference or et cetera is able to sort of have the same platform, but I think as time goes on, we'll continue to have new developments that will help us engage better on both sides.
Great point,
Okay,
Elliott. Yeah, so a few trends that I've noticed is we've had several fairs on Career Echo, Career Fair Plus, Brazen, Handshake, and Simplicity. With Career Echo, it's more of a chat-based fair, although you do have video options. And for the resources that have supported that fair, it is less favorable, simply because it's a drop-in style fair, you will have waves of very, very low and high engagement. And so it's difficult for us to know how many crew we need to staff for the event. So if a school says, hey, we'll allow 7, we may bring 7, but really we only needed 2 because it was a super low engagement, right? Or the vice versa. I staffed an event and met the maximum of 4, but there were 30 students in our line at the start of the fair. So I'm pulling people in last minute. So I find that the drop-in style fairs, although it does enable students to, learn about the company that may not have otherwise and just kind of drop in and learn that way, it is a little less efficient on the employer side, because we're just kind of waiting and seeing if someone's going to come and speak to us, and sometimes they may not, never. In regards to Brazen, Career Fair Plus, Handshake, and Simplicity, I do appreciate that the sign-up piece, because it allows the student to come more prepared. We find that in our feedback from recruiters is that the students know who we are, they've researched what we are offering, they have really great questions, and they're maximizing that 10 to 15 minutes. Another caveat is 10 minutes is not enough. So schools, if you have the opportunity to lengthen the time that employers can talk to students, that would be great. But in the 10 to 15 minutes, we're finding that the students are highly, highly engaged. And so, we're struggling between, should we just, push for more video focused sign up interview type of career fairs, and should we go away, try to stray away from those career echo chat based fairs? So it's tough. It's a really tough balance. And another level of complexity is our VPN. Something that we did not see being an issue is our employer VPN, and about 100% of the platforms that require video or audio, even Zoom right now, requires a disconnection of VPN. And to your earlier point, Elliott, training resources on how to do that, they're like, what? Can we do that? And so that it creates a lot of anxiety on the employer resource side, and to potentially hurt the interaction on the candidate side because of lack of connectivity, strong connectivity. So there are a few things there. I personally prefer the sign up piece because it allows me to pick my schedule if it is a full day fair, rather than just, sitting around for 4 hours just waiting for someone to chime in. So, but I know it varies per recruiter and per company.
Great, thank you. I'd like to just change topics for a few minutes here to get each of your input around anti-racism and the Black Lives Matter movement. NACE recently conducted a survey. We just concluded it a week and a half ago. It's on the website. Meredith will add the links into the Zoom chat. You can see them there, how folks answered them. Basically, the bottom line of what we found, we were trying to create a baseline for what organizations are doing so that we can see how we might be able to help the profession moving forward. And what we found was that for the most part, everyone is really committed to doing something and to making movement in this country, in our companies and in higher ed. But the flip side of that is that there aren't the dollars there that are backing it up quite yet, and that the initial emphasis seems to be, for companies at least, to make a difference in their hiring. That's kind of a starting place for a lot of organizations, but there hasn't been much done in terms of policies and procedures internally or culture internally to support a more diverse workforce, et cetera. And then on the campus side, it's very similar. There are some basic things that are being done, but the really heavy lifting we have yet to see. And so that was just those were the results from our particular survey, but would love to just hear from each of you if there are 1 or 2 strategies that you've put into place or that you're thinking about doing differently with this emphasis on anti-racism. So maybe I can start with Elliott. Elliott, are there things that you're doing at DuPont?
Yeah, so I think it's been certainly a very just interesting season of just reflection and just open communication. I think at DuPont specifically, we've been very focused on trying to bolster that communication internally, but also trying to figure out how that will change our strategies moving forward. So we've always just sort of taken it back to our core values on just being respectful of people, being one of them. So that we sort of use that as our North Star of sorts to, basically guide our strategies. And we want to make sure that we are, being, efficient with our response and also making sure that we're being authentic and also taking our time to not just put together a whole bunch of quick things that will eventually fall apart. So we want to make sure whatever changes we make systemically are going to be long lasting and impactful. So I think in the short run, what we've been able to do is harness a lot of the energy from our colleagues that want to really move the needle and want to attract and engage with diverse talent. So I think this whole virtual dynamic on top of the racial social justice piece, I think has, a silver lining of the whole thing of it has been our ability to engage more colleagues in terms of our recruiting events. So we've been able to get them involved with, our recruiting efforts and other philanthropic efforts that we have connected to our community impact teams. I think is been a silver lining for us at this point in very early stages of this journey. But there's definitely a lot of work being done, and I think larger communications, that we're trying to just make sure we're moving right along with and being impactful ultimately.
Sure, makes sense. Erika.
Yes, those are great thoughts, Elliott. In regards to how Vanguard has been approaching this, I've been honestly proud of how Vanguard has risen to the occasion in the past and currently in the present. The CEO did not waste any time to send a letter to the entire enterprising, condemning racism in any form. And so following from that, Vanguard invested millions of dollars to racial equity and social justice grants, and we're supported HBCUs and Thurgood Marshall at the height of the COVID pandemic to support a lot of their needs with technology and just overall living support for students. Now, what we didn't want to do is just throw money to the situation, right? I think that many organizations have, created commercials and donated money, but what else are they doing? And so I'm really proud that Vanguard has also enacted a skills-based volunteering to allow crew who have special talents in IT, project consulting, project management, financial planning to help out HBCUs at this time. So if you are interested and HBCUs have a need, there's an opportunity for you to sign up and dedicate your resources to them. In addition to that, we already had an HBCU strategy. It's actually going on its third year right now. And at the start of this year, we developed a new department, diversity recruiting strategies, which I'm also aligned to in January. And so right now, actually, as we speak, my manager is meeting with the executive board to expand this department. And what we're looking to do is build a Latinx recruitment strategy similar to the HBCU, but targeting Latinx and HSIs. And so there's been a lot that we're focusing on and have been focusing on prior to, I guess, I won't say trend, but this has been going on for a while. And I think with the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, it has kind of put it back on the spotlight in the world. So I'm just really proud that we're not being reactive. These are things that we've been already in the works. And then in regards to internal development, right? And I think many companies are doing this, but leveraging our crew resource groups. I think they're a valuable resource. And I've been a chief of staff for the North Carolina Vanguard Black Professionals Network. And we've hosted, we're actually hosting events on the 1619 project to include discussion, to encourage crew to discuss that project. We're having bold conversations about racism across the enterprise. We're also hosting voter enablement events. So we're really trying to get involved. Has there been any, definite goals and metrics set? Like many other companies, not quite, but we want to make sure that our strategies are more, to your point, Elliott, sustainable for the future. I think, slapping a number saying you're gonna meet 40% diversity for management level crew is like, great, but what are you doing to retain them? What are you doing to engage them and make them feel included? So we're really trying to tackle it from the roots first, see where crew are, and then take that feedback to our leadership to see how we can just enhance our culture.
Awesome, great. Thank you for that perspective. I'd love to turn to the campus perspective on this. And James, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, we as an institution have, I know that it's been approved for us to create a diversity and inclusion office for Houston Community College. Right now, we're going through the certification process to bring that office to fruition. I believe there's going to be 1 to 2 individuals that are going to staff that office. So that's a start as an institution. As a department, we are new. We formed Career and Job Placement Services in the spring of 2018. And so if you think about in the context of the whole career services field, we're starting on the ground and we're building our processes and our services and resources. So every day, I believe we're ensuring that our students are finding opportunities and being connected with employers, because 80% of our students, and we have 100,000 students, are Hispanic, African American, and Asian. And so we serve a great deal of population of students that need our services and are actually using our services. And I saw a NACE news release about students of color using career services tremendously compared to other populations. And so at HCC, we believe just the fact that we've expanded career services from 5 to 24 individuals, that we're really providing that social justice and leveling the playing field for our students here at HCC.
Great, thank you. And Suzanne.
Thanks. So at UCI, we do have an Office of Inclusive Excellence, and it was formed just a few years ago. But with the murder of George Floyd and bringing this issue again to the forefront, they announced an initiative called the Black Thriving University. And it's a multi-pronged approach to hiring faculty, to providing awareness and education for faculty and staff, and to the student experience. And so we consulted with them to form our own internal DEI group at the Division of Career Pathways. And we've got, 4 main areas that we're also focusing on it that align with the greater university effort. So we are increasing awareness and education for our staff. We've had all staff undergo microaggressions training, implicit bias training, and there'll be more to come. We also have, within our greater organization, we have an allyship interest group that meets weekly to take deep dives into these topics. One of our strategies is to engage with diverse campus and community partners. And so we're really putting a focus on looking for those employers who've made a real commitment in this area. Who are the employers who are offering leadership advancement programs, rotational programs, et cetera, that are designed for marginalized students? Those are the employers that we want to engage with. We're creating inclusive programming and content, and we're doing an audit of our marketing and our resources to make sure that they are representative of our diverse student population. And I could go into much detail on all of those strategies, but that's kind of the high level overview.
Great, thank you all for sharing some high level strategies. We've got not too much time left together. And so one of the things I was hoping maybe you could all do is provide some advice for the other side of the house based upon what you've been learning over the last month, 2 months in engaging in your work, and would love to hear what that advice might be. So if you were providing, James and Suzanne, to to employers about engagement with students. What is it that you would want them to know? And the reverse for Elliott and Erika, what would you want your college partners, university partners to know about you engaging with their students, or routes in which you're doing that and those strategies? Who would like to start?
I can start.
Okay, Suzanne, great.
Yeah. So my advice is to give grace to our students right now. If they are late to an online appointment, it might be a technological problem out of their control. If there's a noisy background, they might be in a situation where there's family members and et cetera. If they aren't dressed in quote unquote interview attire, they might not be able to afford it. Many campuses had opened up clothing closets for that very purpose, and now they don't have access to them. And I'll say one more piece of advice is walk your talk when it comes to DEI initiatives. Our students are very engaged and interested, and they will ask you the tough questions to vet you and make sure that you're a place where they'd like to be employed.
Awesome, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
James.
So I'd say give us a chance. Give community colleges a chance. If I were to talk to employers, especially those Fortune 500 employers, because I've come from a university environment, so I've seen how employers have set up pipelines for decades at some universities. So to employers, give community colleges a chance, especially those community colleges that have the bandwidth, that have the operation to facilitate your need, especially with technology. And I'd say to my career services colleagues, if you haven't connected your career services solution to your student information system, I would highly suggest you do that, just to automate your operation, to ensure that students, when they enroll at your college or university, their accounts are automatically created in your Simplicity or your Handshake or whatever tool you're using. So automate your process with the technology that you have.
Excellent, excellent. Elliott.
Yeah, I would say, again, Suzanne, I love your comments there. So I heard them loud and clear from the employer side. I think to the college side, whatever you can do to remove roadblocks or hurdles for the employer side of the house, I think would be tremendously helpful. This is one very simple example, but one platform that we had to log into, I know for each resume download, we had to do a math problem. So like something as simple as that, I'm already stressed. I can't do anything else. So with that, whatever in your vetting of different platforms and services, just think about what that experience looks like from the perspective of all the stakeholders involved, and really walk through that process to make sure it makes sense, and to make sure you're not, potentially putting up a barrier that doesn't need to exist. And I think that's my main piece of advice.
Excellent, excellent. And Erika.
Yes, all great points of advice. I have 2 points. My first point is to meet students where they are. I think we all can acknowledge we have virtual fatigue. So I encourage schools to consider enhancing their social media profiles or pages and allowing employers to do social media takeovers. I have about 2 schools that do that, and it has, has been well received from students. This is a great way to market an employer culture and opportunities with minimal manpower from both parties, right? All you have to do, the employer builds the content, you post it and leave it alone. And then the other piece of advice I would give, especially for my predominantly white institutions, larger institutions, is that I'm seeing a disconnect between multicultural student groups and the Career Center. So I encourage the Career Center to reach out to these multicultural student groups and explain to them what your services are, not just professionally, but also programmatically, right? Because there is an opportunity that you can weave in the work that these multicultural student groups are doing on campus and bring an employer sponsor in there. Employer may not have an active role in the event, but at least that will help build relations with students and the diverse groups that we already want to see.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Erika. That was really helpful. We're at the end of our time here. I should have said at the beginning, for those of you who saw that Janet Glover was on our panel originally from the University of Florida, she had a last-minute family emergency, so we want to send our best wishes to her so she wasn't able to join us. And Suzanne, so lovely joined in with us. Thank you, Suzanne, for joining us at the last minute. We really appreciate it. And to all the panelists, thank you for your input. This was really great. You gave us some invaluable insights. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you so much. It's been great having you. And we will have another town hall next month. So at the end of October, you will see us back here again to hear how the semester has turned out. And we also have 2 meetups with Shawn coming, which are also free events over the next couple of months, where we hope you'll join us as well. So for now, be safe, be well, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
This concludes today's event. The archive will be available within 3 business days.